The People vs. Happiness presents... Welcome to another episode of Clearing Up the Past. I'm Lil Davy, and this is my big sis, Erin. How's it going, sis?
Very good, thanks. I wasn't expecting Lil Davy.
Yeah, that's who I am. I mean, if we're going to do a series of what it was like in our childhood and things that inspired us.
That's true, your little brother.
Well, Erin, my will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom is as great. I hope you're feeling happy. How you doing today?
Good. I want to say you have no power over me.
I never said I did. As a little brother, I never felt I did.
I'm excited to talk about our subject today.
Yeah, it should be pretty apparent to anyone that knows anything about the movie Labyrinth by that opening that's what we're going to be talking about today. I have to say, I feel like Labyrinth is one of those things that I think a lot of people have kind of glommed onto, and it's almost to the point where, I often mention this, that if something becomes too popular, I kind of want to push away from it a little bit.
Yes.
But Labyrinth is one of those things that just means so much to me in my life. It's just one of those movies that is more than a movie. It really, really will take me back to my childhood, and it has really sustained me over the years through many different ages and many different places that I was. So I'm also very excited to talk about it. And today we're going to do a little more of feeling, emotion, what it means to us overall, overview of the movie for us specifically. But I think what's exciting about what we're thinking about doing with Clearing Up the Past is that we'll then go into a deeper dive into, the music of the movie, specific scenes, some of the technical things, and kind of learn some stuff ourselves and share that with the audience as well. So kind of got some cool ideas for what we can do with this.
Yes, more analyzing type stuff.
Yeah, which is cool because, it's something that we've been, this and other subjects that we'll look at in the future is something that we've enjoyed for years and years and years. But, let's really let's open the hood on it a little bit and see some of the inner workings. So,
yeah.
But before we get into that too much, it's actually been a while since you and I have recorded. I don't even remember what the last recording we did.
I don't either.
It's back in
long time.
Yeah, it has. So hopefully we'll break that trend a little bit, and we'll be able to do this a little bit more frequently. But how are things going for you? I know, again, not always fun to date these things, but we're in the middle of one of the weirdest events in human history, or at least our lifetime. So how are things for you and the family?
Weird. Not bad, though. I'm actually kind of digging quarantine life. I like it. I miss, obviously I miss shopping, going to the movies, and going out to eat, which are like my hobbies. But yeah,
sure.
It's been nice just slowing down, spending time with the kids, going on walks. I've been able to do more running, stuff like that. So I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, there are certainly some appealing things about it as far as like that's concerned, and just changing your perspective on things a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I get you there. It's nice to. I don't mind being at home. It gives me opportunity to catch up on some movies and do those kind of things. I'm still working. I work for an essential business, if that means anything anymore. But I worked from home for a couple weeks, but I've been going into the office for several weeks. Life really isn't all that much different for me, except for today. I went to go prepare some final things for Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. And North Carolina in particular is in phase 1 of reopening, right? So one of the things I thought was going to happen with that was that retail stores were going to open back up. And I went to one place where I was going to try to get a gift. It was closed. I went to another place that I was going to try to get a gift. It was closed. So really, it hasn't really opened back up. I did find somewhere that I could go, but it's a store that I've been to many times, and it seems so weird because like the shelves were just bare.
Yeah.
And it felt, honestly, it felt very much like I was trying to pull together a celebration in the post-apocalypse. Mm-hmm. So I got things that I think will be nice. But it really, like, I had to lower my standards, and I had to, I ordered some things from Amazon, and they're coming very slowly because of, just the way the world is right now too.
Right.
But to try to get things ready for tomorrow just felt it's kind of surreal. I had to kind of lower my expectations and realize that, it's going to have to be good enough.
And surreal is the perfect word, because I don't know, with everybody wearing masks and you have to wait in line to get into a store, and it's strange. I don't really like going out anymore, and I used to love it. So
yeah, it is weird. But all right, well, good to know you guys are making it work, though. And I mean, I guess we all have to in some way or another. There's no other choice. But speaking of surreal, let's talk Labyrinth. So,
yes, let's.
Very surreal movie. And I thought we could get started by, I want to hear your description of the plot from your perspective.
Okay.
Being my older sister, this movie came out in, 1986, I believe?
Yes, it was 86.
So I was 4 years old.
I was...
And you were 10.
Almost 10. 9.
Almost 10.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously a different perspective from beginning, but of course we watched it over the years, so I'm kind of interested to see how you, having watched it originally as a bit older, how you see it versus how I see it. But the movie itself, before you describe that, was not a commercial success by any means.
No. In fact, I think it was the opposite. I think Jim Henson was very disappointed.
Yeah. So $25 million to make this, which in the 80s, I gotta imagine that's pretty steep for this kind of what was seen as just this little kids movie with puppets. I believe they only made about 12 million in box office, like, upon release. So didn't even make their money back, which, you want to make your money back plus, and then you just get to sit back and rake in the money after that. Not what happened here. But Jim Henson, did know that this is a cult classic before he died. So luckily he got to see his vision kind of bring joy to a large group of people in a very special way. But not from a studio standpoint, not really what he wanted. But why don't you jump in and kind of tell us what you think the plot is here?
Okay, how in depth do you want me to go? Just a basic plot summary.
Give us an outline. Okay.
Labyrinth is a story of Sarah, who is a young girl who kind of lives in a fantasy world inside of her head. But one evening she is asked to babysit her baby brother, and she gets really frustrated with the baby. He's crying, so she wishes that the Goblin King would come and take her little brother away. And her wish is granted. Suddenly the Goblin King shows up, her baby brother's gone, and he tells her to get her baby brother back. She has to go through this labyrinth and make it to his castle, which is at the center of the labyrinth. So I'd say the meat of the story is Sarah navigating the labyrinth, meeting different characters and friends along the way, just kind of the trials she has, and then eventually finding her brother and defeating the Goblin King.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But no, you go ahead. And we'll
that is the plot. That is correct.
Okay.
But I guess what I want to ask you is, did any of it happen?
That's what I was going to say. But was it all a dream? Was it another fantasy inside her head? What do you think before I say what I think?
So obviously the fantasy-loving child inside of me wants to think that Sarah had a wonderful adventure and met all of these fantastical creatures and became the hero, went on the hero's quest, and overcame adversity, and in the end saved the baby just in time for mom and dad to come home from their date.
Right.
Stepmom and dad, I should say.
However... I was going to say when the clock struck 13.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. However, I do think that we're dealing with an Alice in Wonderland situation.
Yeah. Which is one of the books in her room, which we'll have to talk about more in depth later.
Yes. When we break down some of the scenes and some of the Easter eggs and things, that's definitely one of the things. But exactly. But we'll kind of just briefly talk about that. Everything that is in the movie post Toby being taken away is in her room.
Yes.
Right. And even the owl. So at the very beginning, in the opening credits, the owl is flying around in the opening credits and then flies down into the park where Sarah is practicing for her play.
Right.
Which I'm not even sure if she's actually in a play or if she's just like really likes that book. I'm not really sure what that's really supposed to be about, actually, now that I think about it.
Well, I know, but that's one of the deeper things of the movie too. I think it was a play that her mom was in, which is all stuff that I've read about.
Oh, okay, well we'll get into that later
yes,
then.
Yes.
But regardless, you know, from the very beginning, she sees that owl in the park, and then she goes home and has this traumatic experience with her stepmother. They fight. She's having to take care of the baby. She feels like life's unfair. Your classic teenage. You know, Sarah's actually a little bit of a brat.
Oh, she is.
To be honest.
Yeah, she throws a fit, temper tantrum.
Yeah, makes her stepmother feel like trash. The stepmother goes to the father and is like, you know, she treats me like a wicked stepmother in a fairy tale. And yeah, and to Sarah, she's lost in this fantasy world of her own, and at that age where, you know, hormones are high and all of that. So to her, she is a wicked stepmother, and she has this bratty little moment, and then doesn't want to babysit her brother, but she has to. And I think that she throws a fit and falls asleep on the bed when she realizes that, and then she realizes that Lancelot's gone. I think that's when she falls asleep, if I had to pinpoint, because that's when things get surreal, right? She goes into Toby's room and finds Lancelot and starts talking about how the goblins are, talking about how she wants the goblins to come and take Toby away. And we instantly start going from what was up to this point a realistic movie to very surreal. We start seeing cutscenes of the goblins and all of that. And then, of course, the owl comes in, and it's Jareth. And the owl, I think, again, is just one of those things that she had seen in that day that kind of comes into her dream and starts this fantasy sequence. And I mean, even at the end, she wakes up in her bed.
Right. In kind of the same position as you see her kind of throw that temper tantrum. She flops down in a huff on her stomach, but she wakes up the same way. So
exactly.
Yes. I think adult me thinks it wasn't real, but yeah, when I watched the movie as a kid, I totally thought this was actually happening.
Yes. I agree with you. To the point where I would like to next talk about what this meant to us as children.
Okay.
So when I watched Labyrinth as a kid, I had a very specific reaction, but I would like to hear yours first.
Okay. Well, I first saw the movie Labyrinth at a birthday party. One of my friends had a party, yes, and her mom had rented a movie for us to watch, and it was Labyrinth. So
That's a good mom.
Yes, exactly. And I remembered really loving the movie. I thought it was weird in parts, but I liked the music. I loved the story. I wanted to be Sarah. And I think that was the main thing of my childhood, because I was very into fantasy, especially fantasy movies. I think I probably lived in that kind of a world like Sarah did for a while. We moved around a lot. And I think that I created these fantasy worlds in my head too, to kind of cope with that. So I related a lot to Sarah. Yes. So
see, this is where clearing up the past is really going to get into the psychology side of what happened to us as children.
Yes.
So keep going.
But that's the main thing for me. I saw it as an adventure story, and it was one that I wanted to live. So I watched it over and over and over again, and I still do. I don't get tired of it now, but
yeah. I haven't seen it for a while, but it's one that absolutely, like, I could watch like every day, put it in the background while I'm falling asleep. You know, it's one of those like indelible, never-ending stories.
Which is something else we should talk about. But on that note, I had the soundtrack. I don't think I got that till I was a little bit older as a teenager, and I would actually play it when I fell asleep. So
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I had the soundtrack too. I definitely had when geez, I don't even remember what the store was called at this point, but in the Grand Central Mall in Vienna, West Virginia, whatever the music store was there, when they closed down, I was working in PacSun right next to it. And when they were closing down, they started doing the going out of business sales. So I went through and was like looking through, what I could get for cheap. And the Labyrinth soundtrack was one of the things that was probably like $2 or something. I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to get that. So I had that for years. And yeah, I listened to it. And yeah, I mean, the music, obviously, again, we'll probably do an episode specifically just on David Bowie and the music. But yeah, I've got some facts about Jim Henson's first choice for who he wanted as the rock star versus who it could have been. But I will hold off on those because that's not this episode. That's completely a different conversation. But keep going. What else? What else did it mean to you as a kid? Anything else, or do you feel like you've kind of?
I think I kind of covered it all. Like I said, I did have some parts I didn't like because I thought they were really weird. Like the fireys, when they take their heads off and throw them and things. I don't think it...
The wild gang.
Yes. I don't think it really scared me, but I don't know. As a child, I just didn't like that. And the little creatures, well, I guess they're goblins that are on the thing they call the cleaners.
Oh, yeah.
That totally weirded me
out.
out.
Not the cleaners.
Too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally weirded me out too.
That's interesting that's interesting that the cleaners in particular bothered you because you barely see them really.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other goblins. Do you think it was just like the high emotion and scariness of that scene in particular, and how Hoggle and Sarah are almost run over by that thing that made them a little extra creepy? Because by the time they push over that wall and get away from it, then you just kind of see them from behind as they're going away. Is that what made it scary?
I think so, and just the oddity of it. It was just strange. Yeah.
I think that, and that's something we could talk about in a future episode, that and the gate that turns into the big mech. That's something that Jim Henson just does so well, is that creates like puppets that control other machines and puppets and things like that. Just really, really makes them seem a little more realistic and a part of a real world. And I wonder if that's what it was about that kind of got you as a kid. It made him seem a little more real.
Probably. Yeah. I just remember the feeling, and I don't know how to describe it as anything other than weird, but
see, this is that psychological part of clearing up the past that I'm talking about. Tell me how that made you feel, Erin. But what else as far as when you were a kid? Anything else, or you feel like that kind of wraps it up?
As a kid, that wraps it up. Now, getting older into teenage years, it was completely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's still past, because I'm going to ask you later what it means to you now. So you can tell me from the teenage years how'd that make you feel?
That was kind of, I think, moving into more of a nostalgia kind of, what's the word? Sentimental type feeling. It was comforting to me then. I don't know. Again, you start telling me, and then maybe some stuff will come back. But like I said, I listened to the soundtrack because it was comforting. It helped me sleep at night. It was 80s.
Yeah. But yeah, so as far as what Labyrinth meant to me as a kid, this is again going into the psychological side of our childhood. My first impression of Labyrinth was terrifying. Because you and Mandy, our other sister, liked to tease me that the goblins were going to come and take me away.
No, we didn't do that. Did we really do that? Like, I legit don't remember doing that.
I was going to ask you if you remembered. Yes, you absolutely tormented me with this, that the goblins were going to come and take me away.
That's great. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. But to the point where, like, at night, I slept with like a nightlight or whatever, and I would read at night. So I probably had a lamp on and stuff like that too. As a pretty young kid, I would see shadows on the walls and stuff like that. And I was convinced it was the goblins that were going to come and take me away. So I don't know.
Sorry. I didn't know we had done that. It's funny now.
Oh, it's okay.
It's hilarious.
In retrospect, of course, it's funny, but I will talk in other episodes about other movies how you probably use them to traumatize me as well. So,
So wait, how old did you say you were?
when the movie came out, I was only 4.
That's right.
So I don't know if I saw it, at 4. If I did, I probably don't really remember that, but it was probably once I started getting older, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, that I probably started actually remembering things. So it probably would have been around those ages where what I'm talking about kind of resonated with me.
Yeah.
But despite that, I loved the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably part of it was I wanted to hang out with Big Sis and watch what she was watching. And I mean, you have had a huge influence on my personal tastes. I also love all things fantasy. I mean, Legend and Neverending Story and Willow and all of these fantasy movies from the 80s, even Kroll and like stuff like that have all been influenced by what you were watching.
Yeah.
And so
that's one, if you know me and you're my friend, I make you watch. Because Becca said she remembers coming over to spend the night when we were teenagers, and I would make them watch stuff like Labyrinth, and I've made my kids watch it. Yeah.
And Princess Bride, we've already done an episode on Princess Bride,
yes.
But yeah, all of those kind of things, absolutely. Yeah. So it was still, while it was a terrifying first impression, and I don't know how long that lasted before I realized that the goblins weren't going to come and get me. It's still a movie that I absolutely love, and it was clearly my first introduction to David Bowie, and I just knew David Bowie as the Goblin King growing up, and then when I realized, I was like, oh, David Bowie was this awesome rock star who had this crazy like glam rock life. Obviously I attached to that too, which is probably why for like some of my 20s I also went through kind of a glam rock phase. So you've influenced me in widespread ways that you probably don't even realize.
No, I don't.
And this movie is at the center of that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it meant. Kind of what it meant to me as a kid growing up, but also beyond that, it was one of my first introductions to Jim Henson. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge Henson file. I am unabashedly. I love Muppets. I love the Creature Shop. Anything coming out of there. I love Dark Crystal. Anything Jim Henson. It's I love it.
Yeah.
So, Emmett Otter's Jug Band, whatever that is. All that stuff. Anything in Muppet Show, Muppets Take Manhattan, Muppets Christmas Carol, Muppets Treasure Island, all of it. Like, I love it.
See, I would say I am too.
So,
but I didn't realize that till later. But that was always in the background of our childhood too. All the Muppet stuff, all the Jim Henson stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
To the point where, even as I was older and got introduced more to like things like Fraggle Rock. Fraggle Rock is one of my favorite things on earth. Like, they were supposed to make a Joseph Levitt Gordon Fraggle Rock movie. I don't know whatever happened to that. I hope they still are, but I actually think they're going to make some Fraggle Rock shorts for Netflix or something like that.
That's what I heard.
If I'm not
something
mistaken,
for Netflix.
I saw that. Yeah. So something's coming like that, and I can't wait. I just love that stuff. I can't get enough of it, and all of that I really truly feel comes from Labyrinth first and foremost, because that was my first introduction to all of that. So that's kind of what Labyrinth means to me as a kid. It really set me down a path that has affected my tastes and a lot of my likes for years and years and years.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's funny how something can be that influential.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, obviously Dark Crystal came from that too, and that's interesting because that's something you and I don't share. I definitely feel like that was a movie that you and I watched together, and from what you've told me recently in our conversations, when I was thinking about doing a Dark Crystal episode before Age of Resistance came out on Netflix, is that you didn't necessarily really like Dark Crystal or watch Dark Crystal when we were young.
But I want to watch it again and try it again, and I'll tell you why I didn't like it. It was kind of the same reason. Well, your same first reaction to Labyrinth. It terrified me. Mm-hmm. When we were little, I was probably 6 or 7. Mom and Dad had some movie like Showtime or HBO, and I watched it on there, and it scared me.
Well, it is a scary movie, and this is not an episode about Dark Crystal, but with the Gartham and the Skeksis, I mean, it's dark. It's probably
dark.
probably the dark. I mean, Labyrinth is dark too, but probably the darkest of Jim Henson's creations, I would say. So it makes sense, but it's one of those things where, like, even the Labyrinth, it's very dark, but it's beautiful. It's got this melancholy, sad, dark feeling that out of comes happiness.
Yes. Oh, I was just going to say that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the theme of the movie too, really, if you think about it, because Sarah is this, I mean, she's a little bratty drama queen teenager, but her feelings are legitimate to her. She is in this turmoil. Her parents have split up, and she's got this stupid stepmother and stepbrother that are just ruining her life according to how she's feeling. And she's trying to deal with incorporating them into her life, and her lives. And she's suffering with that, and to the point where you could almost say she has a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And goes through this, whether it's a nightmare or a fugue state or whatever she goes through. She has to kind of call upon her fantasy world that she's built up around her and escape into that a little bit. But by doing so, she realizes that she doesn't want her stepbrother to be out of her life. She doesn't want him to, quote unquote, turn into a goblin and be away. So she realizes that, hey, this is my life and I want to fight for it. And I do want him to be a part of my life going forward. And that's kind of her accepting that and her way of dealing with it. And in the end, she's not putting away her past because, the very end is, should you need us?
Yeah.
And she's like, I do need you. I do need you. Like, I still have to have this in my life. I'd have to grow up, and I realize that, but I still need this fantasy part of my life. And so then she's dancing at the end with not only her friends, but even some of the goblins and some of the other characters at the end. And kind of, while she didn't necessarily fully grow up and put away childish things, she's learned to incorporate her new life with her old life. Dang, this is going to be a psychological show, isn't it, Erin?
Yeah, it's turning into that. I was going to say that too, that I think it's a lot about growing up and realizing that things aren't fair, things aren't always what you seem, but you don't necessarily have to let go of the things you loved as a child. Obviously, we haven't, so.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in our 40s, going into our 40s, and we're still here talking about it, which, I mean, we're almost at the 35th anniversary of the movie, so we're still talking about it.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I had seen an anniversary showing in the theater, so it must have been 30th because it was a few years ago.
Yeah. That would have been 2016, huh?
Yes, that sounds right.
All right. Well, we have waxed philosophical, waxed psychological. Let's get into a little more specific part of the movie, which is, who would you say is your favorite character?
I really think it's Sarah, even though I feel like I'm cheating to pick the main character. But I think that's because I related to her so much. Like, even now as an adult, just everything she goes through, the emotions she goes through, the realization she has, she's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I will say I don't see you as Sarah. And the reason I say that is because Sarah's also my favorite character, but it's also because she was my first crush.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you don't see me that way then.
Yeah. So I cannot relate her with you, but I understand from a young female perspective, I get why you would relate to her. But
that's another reason I really liked her and wanted to be like her, because she's beautiful. Jennifer Connelly's beautiful. So I don't blame her.
Yes, she is. Yeah. Yeah, and so again, I will say this from the perspective of a child, because we have not got into the adult part of this yet. But as a child, she was absolutely my first crush. I thought she was just gorgeous. I mean, she's spectacular in the movie, both as a young actress, but again, she's just beautiful. And I'll talk more about my perspective of Jennifer Connelly as an adult, but as a young person, obviously she was like easily my first crush from an actress standpoint, somebody I saw in
I'm learning
in film or TV.
learning stuff about you. I had no idea.
See, I told you this show's going to get deep.
Yep. And you probably already know this, but she was only 14 when she made Labyrinth.
Yeah.
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 Which blows my mind because Delaney, my daughter, is 14. It's just, I can't see her making a movie.
Oh, yeah. No, that is crazy when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
And I think just obviously looking back at having seen this when, Jennifer Connelly is older than me, obviously. Mm-hmm. So looking back and seeing Sarah, I still like from that like capsule of childhood, I see her as an older person than me. So even that character is still like my senior, even though I'm, going on 38 and she was 14.
It's interesting that you say that because it's the same for me. I see the same thing.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I mean, that's the psychological time travel of nostalgic film.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what it does to you,
I never thought about it until you said that, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both said Sarah, which I had a feeling was going to happen. So let's say if you had to give a second and a third favorite character, who would they be?
I really like Jareth too, and again, I feel like that's a cop out, but he's very complex. And as a kid, I didn't even really look at him as anything but a villain. But and I know we're not going to go this deep yet, but he's deep. He has
he is deep.
All these emotional layers, and yeah. So he would probably be my second. Third, I love Sir Didymus. He's my favorite. Third.
Okay.
Third character.
So I will second your second and say that Jareth is my second favorite character. The Goblin King is very deep. He of course wants to come across as just this powerful being who has full control over Sarah and the world and everything, and he's going to get what he wants. But he's very emotional. I've heard Roger Ebert said that he saw the character as being very like throwing a temper tantrum himself, very childish. And Jim Henson kind of came back and said, no, he's actually very level-headed and very calm. It's just that, again, he is feeling a lot of emotion and trying to give Sarah a little bit of an adventure and kind of guiding her through that. But by doing that, he realizes that, and actually I'm probably starting to talk a little off script from what he said, because really I think Jim Henson left the quote at that he thought he was very even keel and normal. But going back into my psychological breakdown of the character, I think that he was giving Sarah an adventure, giving her something that she needed. And again, it's possibly her own psyche, but if we're thinking about him as an actual entity, then he was providing for her what she needed. But at the end, which I'll get into more of this in a little bit, but at the end, he realizes that by doing so and allowing her to become the hero and win in the end, he also has had to be the villain and he has to be vanquished, and now he has to let her go. And so it's heartbreaking for him at the end. And that's really where some of the deep psyche comes through in his character. So I absolutely think that he is my second favorite character. Now, I think I've pronounced his name 3 different ways. So let me hear you say his name.
Jareth? Is that what you mean?
Jareth.
Yes.
Yeah, Jareth, which is what I would have thought I would say, but I think just in natural flow of conversation, I think I said Gareth a second ago, which is weird.
I didn't notice.
Yeah. Jareth the Goblin King, that's what I would say as well, but I just wanted to clarify that because I know listening back to this later on, I'm going to be like, why did I say it like that?
Yeah, I didn't notice.
But Sir Didymus is your third favorite character.
Yeah, just because he's cute. And he's loyal.
So it's purely a cute factor? I said it's purely a cute factor, but you were starting to answer.
Right. Not purely, but mostly. But yeah, he's loyal. He's the brave knight, so.
Yeah.
Or he sees himself that way anyway.
Yeah, good character. And he is. I mean, he's fearless. He's got that little dog energy. He'll go up to against anything. He thinks he's huge, no matter even if it's a giant mech armor that's 10 times his size. He'll stand up to it, or 10 times, 100 times his size. He'll stand up to it. So that is a good answer, and you know, again, we'll deep dive more into the kind of the puppetry between him and the dog and all of that, because I think he's an interesting character from that standpoint too. But I gotta say, my third favorite, part of me wants to say Hoggle just because he's such a huge part of the movie, but it's not true. So if I'm being true to my heart and true to my true feelings right now, I would have to say it's Ludo.
I knew you were gonna say that. But you gotta love Ludo. I mean,
yeah, how can you not? Yeah. He is lovable, and you gotta love the you know, stereotypical. At first, you see him, he's a monster that's caught in a trap, and you think, it's this big scary thing, and really, he is the biggest character in the movie for the most part. But he's also the most just lovable and pure and innocent character in the movie as well.
And another example of things are not always what they seem, which is like a running theme through everything. Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Ooh, I just thought of a good one that's going to come in future episodes. There's several Easter eggs in this movie that I didn't realize. I'm not going to talk about them now, but there's one in particular with Jareth that's it's real good. I wish we could talk about it now, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Okay.
So let's talk about next, what is your favorite scene? And now, again, I will specify that I don't want you to go into deep, like, technical sides of things. Just a quick overall psychological, feeling, analytical. What is your favorite scene?
That's easy. And it's the scene, the ballroom scene when As the World Plays Down is playing, and Sarah's dancing with Jareth, and and I saw it again 2 completely different ways as a kid and now, but I think it was my favorite then and now. Yeah.
So that would have been my answer too. I mean, that is not just probably my favorite song in that movie.
Mine too.
But I gotta say, it's like one of my favorite songs. Like, David Bowie wrote that, and it's beautiful. It's heartbreaking. Again, it's that melancholy happiness.
Yes.
Which people have described my musical taste. I've had people say, "Oh, that's so Dave music," and first off, I don't like when people call me Dave, but that's what people have said in particular. I am David, not Dave. But anyway, that's another story.
I knew that.
But what people have meant by that, several people have said this. What they mean by that is that it is a melancholy music. And most people will probably think it's kind of depressing. But to me, it may be sad, it may be slow, but it's meaningful. And to me, I can gather happiness from it.
Me too. Again, it's one of those, it's just kind of comforting.
Yes, comforting. It's like a warm blanket. I think some people just see it at surface level and, that's sad.
Yeah.
And so they don't give it the time to realize, like, wow, that's deep and comforting and wonderful.
It's really deep, and I think a lot of this movie is, and I know that we're going to dive deeper into it, but it's metaphorical, it's romantic, it's sad.
Yeah.
But comforting.
So Sarah was on drugs during this part, and we'll talk more about that. I don't want to go too deep into that, but she was absolutely she was it's kind of Inception if you think about it. It's a dream within a dream. But again, we're not going to go too deep into that. But what do you like specifically, just on surface level? What do you like about that scene, other than the music?
Surface level, the costumes, the imagery. As a child, kind of scared me with the masquerade masks and things.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, Sarah looks beautiful. She's got this big princess ball gown on.
She's definitely older than 14 in that scene.
Yes, definitely. Which, again, as a kid, you don't notice those kind of nuances, but yeah.
Yeah.
Side note, and maybe I'm not supposed to talk about this now, but I got to see that dress in person, and I almost cried. It was amazing. And they had Jareth's costume that he wore in the ballroom scene as well. And it was just incredible. Yeah,
so absolutely. And again, huge crush town here. Because she's absolutely gorgeous. And please know when I say this is an almost 38-year-old man, I'm talking about a child's view of this movie.
Yes.
She's absolutely gorgeous in that. And I don't mean anything weird and inappropriate about it today, saying that. I feel confident in being able to say she's beautiful in that scene. So there's that. It's very romantic. And I'll even say David Bowie is beautiful in that scene.
Oh, yes.
It's just, he's kind of in the crowd at first and intertwining. And well, again, we'll get into more details on it. I probably shouldn't talk too deep. But I get why it was also scary, though, because at the end, when she throws the chair through essentially the side of the bubble that they're in, the crowd kind of starts... before she throws the chair through, the crowd kind of starts laughing and being weird and crowding in on her, and she realizes the absurdity of the situation and then escapes it. But those masks and everything, actually that podcast I was telling you I listened to earlier today, Raymond Carr was talking about it. It's a Movie Crush with Chuck Bryant. He had Raymond Carr on it, and he was talking about specifically his studio or the work that he was doing at that time. I'm not sure exactly what. They made the masks for that, and they made them like 50 masks specifically for that. Or actually, you know what? I think I'm thinking of it wrong. I think that he made 50 masks for another production that was inspired by that production.
Oh, okay.
I will clarify this. When we deep dive into it. But anyway, obviously had a very big impact on him, because those masks are masquerade masks. You usually see the big noses and the large features, the exaggerated features in those kind of masks. But those are just a little bit different. They've got that Brian Froud feeling, right? So Brian Froud was... I think we'll talk more about him, of course, in the future, but he's the one that really did a lot of the art direction for this movie and Dark Crystal and other things. And that's just absolutely the epitome of his style.
Yes.
If you look at any of his drawings and his books and things, it's like straight from those books, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which are amazing.
I agree with... Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And, obviously I was going to pick that too, but I also had a feeling you were going to pick that, so I had a backup.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Please.
I was getting my nails done, and this is relevant, I promise. And the girl doing my nails had a tattoo that said, "I move the stars for no one." And
nice.
She was like 19, so I was so impressed that she was surprised I knew where that quote was from, which is from that song in that scene. But yeah, I thought that was really cool that there are other Labyrinth fans out there, and there are young Labyrinth fans out there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool that she thought it was neat that you knew it, and you're like, what are you talking about? I think it's neat that you know it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Gapped the generations there.
Yep. So what other scene had you picked?
The MC Escher-esque scene.
See, that'd be my second too, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably me more as an adult. As a child, as a young man, ballroom scene, hands down. But as an adult, the depth of David Bowie's emotion in that scene. Again, I kind of talked about it earlier. This is where he realizes, he's like, I'm beat. She got to the center of the labyrinth, but that's kind of what I wanted. Because I wanted her to win and I wanted her to kind of move on. But what that means for me is that this moment for me as the villain is coming to a head, and I'm going to be vanquished and I'm going to be out of her life and I have to let her go. That's absolutely, I think, what that means. And you see it in him because he's running through this MC Escher-esque set, which we'll talk about because there's some cool tech stuff there that they actually just physical things that they did. But he's running through this set, and the baby's there, and Sarah's trying to get to Toby. But the whole time he's singing this, which is one of my favorite songs, and we'll talk more about the music in depth again. But Within You, which was written by David Bowie, of course.
And I was wrong. I Move the Stars for No One is in Within You, not in As the World Falls Down.
I was going to politely correct you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't know that. I did.
But yeah, it starts out, how you turn my world, you precious thing. You starve and near exhaust me. Everything I've done for you. I move the stars for no one. and it goes on, but this is him saying like, you've beat me, but like I've done everything I've done for you. I've done it out of love, and there's no more I can do for you. And it's absolutely heartbreaking when you think of it from that standpoint. And again, it's a little creepy that it, you gotta break the mold of, yes, this is a 14-year-old girl, and yes, this was at the time probably an almost 40. He probably was in his 40s, right? At that point, yeah, definitely in his 40s, because he was like in his 20s and the 60s and stuff. So yeah, that makes sense.
But when you look at it as, well, yeah, it is still creepy. I was gonna say, when you look at it as something that's in her mind, maybe it's not as creepy, but it kind of is.
Yeah, it is, but you have to think of the Goblin King as ageless.
That's true.
Because, yes, a 40-year-old rock star is playing him, but he is also just this fantasy character. Yeah. So you kind of have to think about it like that if you're going to really like appreciate the psychological, impact of this moment. But yeah, and then of course she gets the child, and she has her little psychological moment where she remembers the lines of the play, and says, "My will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom is great. You have no power over me." And again, it's like, that's actually an interesting thing that I never really thought about. She had to remember the words at the beginning to start the fantasy sequence to get rid of Toby, and she had to remember the words at the end to defeat the Goblin King and end the fantasy sequence.
Wow, I never thought of that either.
I never have either until just now. So that's a very interesting thing. A weird little thread there. So it's like her just kind of working through some stuff,
Yeah. Again, one of those like deep psychological things that we can talk about later, but it's a deep movie. And I wanted to point out too, it's a deep movie. When you were talking about how sad it is, how great of an actor that David Bowie was, because he looks genuinely sad when he's singing that song. Like,
absolutely.
I almost think he does start crying for a minute.
Yeah. And I think that does speak to him as both an actor and a musician, and just an artist and a creator. I do think that he puts a lot into his music. And again, I love David Bowie. And it's interesting because David Bowie, again, I went on to appreciate him as a musician beyond this. But he's also one of those people, like, I couldn't name probably one of his albums right now.
Me either.
Most Ziggy Stardust or whatever, probably, whatever. But I couldn't confidently name one of his albums. I could probably confidently name maybe 6, 7, or 8 of his songs. But he's just made such a huge impact on my life, and I think of him as one of the greatest artists, and I do like his music. And did you ever listen to his last album, Black Star or whatever?
No.
That's sad, because he wrote it while he was dying, basically.
Oh.
He knew he was going to die, and it's musically, it's not necessarily easy to listen to, but you can feel the emotion in it. Like, he's like kind of like, this is my goodbye letter to the world. So I think that that's why he's impacted so many people and become such a part of the zeitgeist and pop culture. And we'll talk more about the music later on. So I'm sure I'll have more to say about that. But yeah, so that's my favorite scene.
That'd be my second favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, we've got about 10 minutes here before we've hit an hour, so why don't we start talking about what Labyrinth means to us now, which I think we kind of have been talking about that. Yeah. But really sum it up. Give it to me, sis. What does Labyrinth mean to you now, Erin?
The line, "You have no power over me," has meant a lot to me, especially the past few years. Alex got me a bracelet with that engraved on it because I love it so much.
That's nice.
Yes. So I think this is going to sound corny, but I'll say it. It's taught me to accept things I can't change, that life is not fair, but that's just the way it is. And you have no power over me is kind of a personal thing, so I won't really get into that, but it's really got me through some hard stuff. So as an adult, just remembering all that and remembering the movie itself is comforting. But that would be the main thing, that you have no power over me.
Okay. And that's nice. And I think that again, without getting too in depth on things you've been through and why that's important to you, I think that a lot of people listening to this could relate to that, that they've been through a lot of things and things that seem to control their lives and change them and dictate their future, when in actuality, if you just take a step back and think about it, it doesn't have power over you.
No, it doesn't.
You have power over you, and you control your destiny. And again, it's, if we think about it at the psychological level, this movie is about acceptance and moving on.
Yeah.
And so I see why, and that's the moment where she has truly accepted her situation and puts it out into the universe that, like, I'm done.
Yeah.
This isn't me.
And kind of just getting outside of your own head and your own limitations.
Yeah. Wow.
I might be making it way deeper than it needs to be, but
no. I mean, again, having watched this movie 1,000 times, and even having, researched this and watched YouTube videos and listened to podcasts and stuff like that, I'm still like getting more from this, just talking to you about it when we really break it down like that. So that is a sign of a truly brilliant piece of art.
Agreed, and it's just so sad it wasn't recognized as that at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Went on to be a cult success and mean a lot to a lot of people, including ourselves, obviously. But yeah, it is kind of sad that at first. But I mean, I guess that's art, I mean, even a literal painting on the wall is often not appreciated until its creator is dead.
Yeah.
So
sadly, yes.
At least Jim Henson got to see the kind of cult following that came before he passed away, and obviously his children and the legacy that came from that. But so to me, obviously I kind of think, again, I've already said what it means to me as an adult. It is absolutely a nostalgia blast. It is one of the most important movies to me, and it's weird to say, because I know a lot of people are like, it's just puppets and it's cute, and and there's like, there's girls that, and I'm not talking about the girl that got the tattoo, but there's girls with goblin tattoos and hoggle tattoos and and stuff like that, and Jareth tattoos and stuff like that have kind of turned it into this thing that's cheaper than what it was to begin with, or what it can be for some people. But it truly is one of the most important movies that dictated just so much of who I am and things that I was into for most of my life, including today.
Yeah.
So that's, I feel shaped by it. And it's, again, this is a safe space, and it's weird to say, and I almost hate to say that, because it does seem to some people on the outside to just be a cheap little thing, and it makes you kind of basic, and you're just into the hot topic culture around it or something like that. But that's not what it is to me. I love Jim Henson. I love David Bowie. I love Jennifer Connelly. And just the feeling from the music and everything, just it is me.
Yeah.
And so it's like returning home to watch, and I need to watch it again because I haven't seen it for a while. But
yeah, you should.
But that's what it means to me.
Me too. It was I like when you said it is me, because I do think the same thing, and I didn't really realize it till we started talking about it, that it's been a constant, and again shaped a lot of who I am now. Yeah. In more widespread ways than you probably even think about, or that either of us have even talked about. Yeah, I'm sure.
But which excites me, honestly, if this was the only episode we did about Labyrinth, I'm really happy with it, because I think that, from the psychological standpoint, we got pretty deep into this. But I do want to talk more about the music. If nothing else, I want to talk more about the music.
Yes.
I would like to kind of, there's so much, like from the special effects and the puppetry and just all of that, and even how it affected future projects for Jim Henson and other things, but and beyond Jim Henson, just movie making in general. So there's a lot we can deep dive into here, and hopefully we'll take that opportunity to do so. But this was good. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like cleared up the past in a lot of ways. You learned some things about me, and learned some things about you, and we learned some things about the movie just by kind of talking it out.
Yeah.
So a successful episode, I would say.
And some stuff about myself that I hadn't thought about. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
These always go a little bit different than I think they're going to, but that's cool because you just never know.
Yep. Oh yeah. This is episode 36 of The People versus Happiness. This is episode, I'm not sure, 6, 7 of what has become Clearing Up the Past.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've learned in just talking to people and doing this and sitting down, and no matter how much I prepare or how little I prepare, it will be different than what I'm expecting.
Yep. Same. I don't think I talked about many things on my notes at all, but that's okay.
Hey, keep the notes. We'll talk about them in the future, I'm sure.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
And I think at that point, only thing I can say at this point is, should you need us, we'll be here again in a week or so, doing another episode of Cleaning Up the Past. So until then, do what makes you happy. And Erin, I really appreciate the time you spent with me today.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, big sis, have a good evening, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Cyanocobalamin.